Hey everyone! In the next 3 videos, you'll learn about the 3 main subdisciplines of genetics. I'll also use these videos to put different parts of this course into the context of these 3 main subdisciplines, so by the end, you'll have a pretty good idea of where the course is headed. As usual, remember to fill out the learning guides, and by the end of the videos, you should be able to answer 2 questions.
Okay, and our 2 questions are: what do the 3 main subdisciplines of genetics study? And what are some research methods that are used in each subdiscipline? So there are 3 main subdisciplines of genetics. There's transmission genetics, population genetics, and molecular genetics. We'll start with transmission genetics. Transmission genetics, also known as classical genetics, is the study of heredity, which is the transmission of traits from parents to offspring. As you've seen previously, chromosomes contain genes, and genes control traits. So how do offspring get chromosomes from their parents? Chromosomes are loaded into gametes during meiosis. During fertilization, the gametes, which for humans have 23 chromosomes each, fuse and form the offspring, which get the chromosomes from both gametes, so now they have a total of 46. So because this is the way that traits are passed from parents to offspring, transmission genetics studies chromosomes, meiosis, and fertilization. We'll cover this in detail in Chapter 2. In addition to looking at the inheritance of chromosomes, transmission genetics also examines the inheritance of genes individually, as well as the traits controlled by those genes. Perhaps the first transmission geneticist was Gregor Mendel himself, who, by crossing pea plants to each other in a controlled way, and observing traits like flower color in their offspring, discovered that gametes have an equal chance of getting either allele a parent has, which is essentially Mendel's first law. Mendel also showed, again using crosses and keeping track this time of 2 traits in the offspring, that most genes are inherited independently of one another. Alright, settle down, Gregor. We'll cover Mendel's work in Chapter 3. Another of the early transmission geneticists, Thomas Morgan, working with fruit flies and their chromosomes, noticed that males had a chromosome that females didn't have, and through further work, showed that chromosomes and their genes are in fact what control traits. He also found that traits controlled by genes that are on these sex chromosomes are inherited differently than genes found on these other chromosomes, which are called autosomes. And he had this fabulous beard, so, quite a guy. Mendel was okay too, I suppose. Anyway, since sex chromosomes can affect how traits are passed on, transmission genetics is also the study of the inheritance of genes on sex chromosomes. We'll study Morgan's work and lots of other things about sex in Chapter 4. Now sometimes genes can affect each other's expression. We call this gene interaction. Here's a fictional example. Imagine that a gene called BRF, when expressed, converts brown pigment to black pigment, and this causes the brown fur phenotype to be converted to the black fur phenotype. Now also imagine that a second gene called NBB, when expressed, inhibits the first gene, so that brown fur is once again the phenotype when NBB is present and expressed. Gene interaction, which is also part of transmission genetics, is something we'll take a look at in Chapter 5. Now you've seen how pedigree analysis can be used to study human genetic diseases and help parents make decisions about having children. Pedigree analysis is part of transmission genetics because it deals with the transmission of inherited genetic diseases or conditions within a family. We'll cover pedigrees in Chapter 6. Now, as we've seen, transmission genetics deals with chromosomes. And I'm just showing you a part of a chromosome here. Determining the location of these genes on their chromosome, as well as the distances between these genes, is called gene mapping. And we'll look at how to map genes in Chapter 7. Okay, so we've now gone through many aspects of transmission genetics. But how did geneticists study all of these things? In other words, what research methods do we use to carry out this type of research? The main tool we use in transmission genetics is the genetic cross, where two individuals, parent 1 and parent 2, are mated to produce offspring. And it's through the analysis of these offspring that we can study all of the things we've listed here and more. The genetic cross is a very powerful tool, and we'll look at a lot of crosses during this course. And for me anyway, the fact that we can study all of these things simply by doing crosses and observing offspring is really a testament to the ingenuity of the classical geneticists that came before us. So, thanks guys!